Welcome to the Elevate Your Equity podcast, where we, as married busy professionals, leverage real estate investing to unlock the 3+1 degrees of freedom: health, location, time, and financial.
Today, I'm joined by Mr. Grant Warrington. Grant, how you doing today?
Good. I'm doing great, man. I appreciate you having me on, Derek.
Absolutely. This is going to be a blast. And for those of you who don't know Grant is a full-time real estate investor in Southeast Michigan, focusing on syndicating 100 plus unit apartment buildings. He started, as we're going to find out soon here, with very little money, limited knowledge, and a single family rental. That's one single family rental. Recently, he quit his 24-year career job to take a pay cut and get into property management full-time and oversaw around 800 units. He then called it quits with the property management job and then ended his W-2 safety net as well to follow his dream of working full-time in real estate. Right now, he owns and self-manages a couple of properties with him and his wife, Monika. You know, Grant, you were telling me right before you were hopping on the show what you guys have right now. Why don't you rehash that here so everyone can hear as well?
Yeah, sure. Again, thanks, Derek, for having me on the show. I've been looking forward to this. Really appreciate it. So it's my wife, Monika, and I, and we're 50-50 partners on everything. So if there are any husband and wife couples out there, I think you are too as well, Derek. You guys are partners. We're 50-50. So it's not just me doing this. It's my wife and I. We have 3 apartment buildings. We have a 20 unit, an 11 unit, and an 8 unit, and then a duplex. And that's personally owned, just her and I, no partners. Like you said, started with one single family. We also just recently, last week, closed on a 98 unit in Alabama. We're part of the GP team, part of the syndication on that one. So couldn't be happier.
Yeah, and congratulations on that. You guys have worked well together. I know it takes time and energy to build that momentum up, but I think that's awesome that you guys are doing it together. It's really, really cool. So, I know that that's where you are right now, but why don't we back up a little bit and why don't you tell us a little bit about how you found real estate in the beginning? Obviously, you worked a corporate job for a while, but I want to hear where that spark for real estate investing showed up in your career.
Yeah, I can really go back in probably my 20s. I started really reading. I bought Carlton Sheets. I don't know if you remember Carlton Sheets, if anybody else bought that program, listened to the cassette tapes, and man, I was ready. I bought 3 single family homes in like 2003. I had a lot of personal issues back then, a lot of things going on. All my tenants owed me $5,000. I wasn't good at what I did. And it was a disaster. I had no investors in that. I had to declare bankruptcy. Bankruptcy was finalized in like 2007. It was just a tremendous strain on my life back in that point. But I always knew I'm going to get back into this. I love the idea of it. I didn't have the knowledge and I wasn't in the right space personally. So in like 2011, I believe it was, I quit drinking. With the help of God. That was the number one step that changed my life. And in 2014, I met my wife, and in December 2014, we bought our first single family rental. She had a passion for it. We talked about it, and I said, wow, I do too. And I always wanted to get back into it. And October 2014, I started listening to Bigger Pockets, and 2 months later was educated, and we bought our first home together. And that's how we started, with little money. And I had 20 grand. I'll be honest with you. I had 20 grand. She had 20 grand. We bought this house and had to rehab everything: roof, driveway, hot water tank, furnace, air conditioner, electrical, plumbing. We were out of money, out of business, didn't know what to do, man. It was game over. We're like, well, this sucks. Now we got one house, and that's where we started. And it was exhilarating and scary at the same time. And then we just had to learn how to grow with no money.
Man, that takes some dedication there. For you to come in and buy a property, did you guys know what you were getting into when you first bought that thing? You're like, well, it's a shell of a house, I guess, and it's kind of a live-in flip, but you guys used all your money to buy the house itself, and now you have to come up with the extra funds and the skills to be able to rehab it while you're probably living inside of it. Were you guys living inside of it as well?
No, we weren't. It was probably 4 blocks away from where I live now. Okay. And where we lived at the time. So this is where I grew up, my city, know it like the back of my hand. It was $65,000 for this home. And I was like, this is going to be a good deal. That's what we knew. We knew what the rent was going to be. We were kind of shocked on the rehabs and everything that went into it. It was a great learning experience, but we knew like this will be a good deal. And that's really why we went after it and pursued it. And it was in our wheelhouse. It was $65,000. So we thought we can afford to buy it and we can afford to rehab it.
Yeah,
And
great.
we could, but ran out of money.
Yeah, I can imagine. And obviously things worked out really well, which is usually the case when you hold on to property, when you hold on to real estate. So that's great. And obviously, you know, the success is in the pudding. You guys are now on this growth trajectory that's incredible. So let's talk a little bit about your superpower, which is construction, apartment rehab, managing a building, because you've done this for a while hands-on. And what I'd like to do is maybe, can you walk us through how it was that you got this knowledge? How did you first get this property management gig that I guess started turning into more of a big thing for you?
Yeah, and superpower might be a little misleading because I was thrown into this shit. You know what I mean? It's like, here you go, dude. Here's the ball. You know what I mean? And it's like, wow, that's how I learned. We just bought these properties in the beginning that were distressed, right? Like everybody else, to add value, to refinance them. And I just had to learn on the fly. I didn't have really, when we first started this, really didn't have any knowledge, but I have a passion for construction. I was a construction worker for 23 years. So I was around it. I wasn't handy. I wasn't any of that. I had become to a certain degree handy, but really I learned on the job. I Googled, I read, I listened to podcasts, and that's really what I did and where I gained my knowledge from, just trying to get as much knowledge off the internet as I could. I YouTubed, and it's all out there. And that's one of the reasons now I create a lot of content around this. And what I like to create is like, I'm not going to teach you how to buy an apartment building. There's a ton of websites out there that are better than me about that. But I want to teach people like, what the hell happens after you buy one? And I think that's where it falls off. Like, what kind of paint do I use? What kind of flooring do I use? Click, plank, or glue down? You know, what kind of locks do I use? There's just so many different things that hit us all at once. And you know how it is. You have to sit there and go, oh, shit, let me weigh my options. Let me sit and think about this. I wanted somebody I could just plug into off the internet and copy. That's all I've done my whole career, is just found people and copied them. There really wasn't anybody out there I could copy for that. So that's kind of why I just throw my shit out there, and I'm like, hey man, this is what we figured out. Might not be the best step. We might pivot in 3 years and change, but this is what we're doing now, and it's working. Maybe it'll work for you. And that's kind of what I do. I just kind of throw that out there.
Yeah, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel, right? And if there isn't a wheel out there and you have to either reinvent or try things out to see how they work, then that's what it is. You just got to do it. And I love the fact that you're not afraid to roll up the sleeves and just get some work done. So I think that's a great trait to have. And especially your work ethic is shining through here. And I have to remind the audience, and you too, Grant, that 2011, when you said you stopped drinking, that was only about 10 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years.
You know? And if you look at your trajectory over the last 10 years, it's just really, really cool what you've done so far. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
Now I want to shift a little bit. Now we know what your background is as W-2. We know that you had to figure stuff out as a property manager, helping another investor out, right, while you're working a full-time job. Mm-hmm. Now, taking that knowledge, obviously it was valuable. What type of things do you look for now when you're doing due diligence, when buying a repositioned asset, from your experience that you've learned, right? If you're looking for a property, either reposition or do some sort of value add in it, what are the things that you look for now, given your experience, when you're going to purchase?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'll go over the things we looked at to buy the apartments we have, right? Basically, for one, can I get to the owner? That's what I'd always try and do, because I bought 2 off market. Can I get to the owner? And it's really relatively simple. I would look for a property that needs some work. Like this is what anybody could do. I would go on Google in my area and I'd look for large rooftops, right? Those are apartment buildings. And I know the area, but you're going to be surprised how many there are out there. And I would target those buildings, look for distressed properties that aren't managed by big property management companies. Things like that I could get to the owner. I would Google the owner, find the owner, Google his name and cell phone, his or hers, and end up calling them. Or I would go there, talk to tenants, ask them, hey, I'm looking to live here. Can you give me the landlord's phone number? All kinds of ways to get owners' numbers, get in front of them. And basically, we want to look for properties that need work. In the beginning, the reason being that we can get those would be in our price range. We didn't have a lot of money, so we needed to work with what we could. Like, yeah, we'd love to buy a bigger property that was fixed up and all that, but it's like, we couldn't take those down. We just didn't have the money. It was my wife and I. So if I can get in front of somebody off market, if I could, we could add some value, then those were huge. So we know the area, we know and in my area, the rents are usually pretty low because these owners have owned them for generations, and they don't raise rents because they don't want to do turnovers. So, but it's hard to get your hands on those buildings. So if you could ever get one of those, we know immediately, we're like, boom, we can raise rents. We got a rehab. There's a ton of shit that needs to be done, but you hang on long enough and you get yourself a good asset.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. That's so true. In talking about due diligence, let's say that you get a property under contract, or you get like you get a sneak peek, right? Either a tenant lets you in, or the property manager or the landlord's like, yeah, you can take a look at it before you write an offer or whatever. What are the things that you're looking for inside those units that have really done well for you, or things that are maybe things to look out for?
I can go over some things to look out for because, and here's a tip. Maybe I shouldn't tell people this, but you know what? If something's for sale and I can go walk it, I go walk it. If the door's open, will walk through there and I will look at it. That's what I've done in the past. And you'd be surprised. We lock all our buildings, but a lot of people don't. So that would be something I would do. On the last one, it was a 1031 exchange. I can get into that later, but I needed to lock it down. The nice thing is, when you're buying buildings in your area, I knew the building. I had already reached out previously months before to try and buy this building. I was unsuccessful. So I knew this building. The other thing I knew is I knew it was garbage. I knew, I hate to say that, but I mean, I knew it needed everything, right? Because it's a 1960s or 70 building that's been just deferred maintenance. You can see, I had walked through it. I knew the building. I knew it needed everything. It was on the market for 4 hours. I got it locked up under contract in 4 hours, and I never walked it. And that's what I told him. I don't need to see it. I already know it. I already knew it needs everything. It was boiler heat, so I knew about boilers, through wall air conditioning units, so basically when we go into these, like, I knew that shut off valves are probably all broke for the hot and cold under the sinks, the toilets, right? The shower, those are probably all bad. We'll probably have to replace all those. The toilet's going to have to go. We're going to rehab all the flooring. So I already know, like, it's a 2-bedroom. We're going to put $8,000 to $10,000 into this, probably closer to 10. Those are things I look at. And then the other wild cards, right, are the boiler. The boilers usually should still be pretty good. 1960s, hot water tank, roof, parking lot, windows, and zone valves, depending on how big too, part of that boiler system. But those are all kind of things we keep in mind getting into this. But like I said, when you tie into a building like that, you just know you're going to be spending X amount of dollars.
Yeah, of course. It sounds like these distressed assets are ones that you basically, as long as you're well capitalized and you understand the building, like you've seen it. And I think that there's, one thing that I'm picking up from this is that there's no silver bullet, right, Grant? Like, it seems like you just have to know the market. You have to know what deals or what inventory is out there, what's distressed, right? If you're doing your Google search and you're looking at roofings for properties that maybe you go drive by, you're going to look at it, especially if it's an off market. And eventually when that property does come on the market, you're going to be ready to pounce on it, right?
Yeah.
Because you're there.
And just a couple things we would do in that situation, we always refinance. We would do blanket loans on our houses, rehab them, package them together, do a blanket loan, commercial loan. And then we took that money and we bought our first building. That's how we got into it, right? Down payment. But another thing you can do is we would also take out some private money, 50 grand or so, and we'd pay that. And we also had our home equity on our home sitting there too, and ready to put that to work if we have to. So like you said, I mean, it's important to be well capitalized. It's important to have those things there along with your capital in your account, just in case things go wrong. And believe me, they do. We've had plenty go wrong.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Thank you for sharing that. So now I want to talk a little bit more about like operations, if you don't mind, especially with your knowledge of property management and, doing things yourselves for quite a while. It's a rare opportunity for us to talk with someone who's directly managed properties for a long time. Can you tell us how, like, you're looking at vacancy and pricing when you're getting vacant units to turn, or when you're looking at the overall economics, right, of a building? Because I know, if you really want to keep the occupancy high, right, like at 100%, you got to be under market rents.
Yeah.
And the vice versa is true, right? If you want to push rents high, then you're probably going to take a hit on vacancy until the market tells you it's too high.
Yep.
So where do you guys like to, operate around, or where have you been historically?
Where do we want our occupancy to be? Obviously 100%, right? But we've gotten into some trouble with that. We've tried to push some rents in this environment. And here's something that we noticed. Our rents are $825 on our 1 bedrooms, right? Right on our 20 unit currently, yep. $825. Well, we pushed them to $875 because we feel that $825 is probably a little low, but it happened to be in February and March. Now, the problem we ran across was we were getting applications and we were getting showings. So that tells you the price is right. $875 is right? So we left it. But we took these applications, we ran through them, and they didn't qualify. Not through our system, they might through others. But what that gave us was a false sense of $875 is a good price to be at, because it wasn't, because we weren't filling those seats, heads and beds, right? We were not doing that. So that screwed us, I'll be honest with you. And we kind of learned that and had to adjust. We lowered the rent. We're back to $825. Again, it was in February and March. Tough time to fill vacancies in our market on our 1 bedrooms. But that was something we learned. So yeah, we don't want to be the highest rent, the highest market rent. We want to be just below that, like you said. The other thing we're starting to do, and this is what's really tough, is we have some people we put in that, let's say they're at 700 rent, 825, and they're rehabbed units, but we put them in last year or 2 years ago, and they're staying with us. How do we catch them up to market? It's extremely difficult. So that's a tough conversation Monika and I have to have with each other. Do we increase them $125, bring them up to market? And it's like, well, then they leave and then we have to turn the unit over, right? What's the cost of turning the unit over and losing this good tenant? So, for us, it's just kind of a case by case basis, and we're at 41 units. So, there's probably a lot of people that are much more suited to answer that question than I am. But with ours, it's always having a conversation, her and I being honest with each other about it. Because, I might say, let's do 950. And she's like, slow down, buddy, slow down, And it's like, it's that honesty, not getting mad at each other, having a conversation and going, look, if we do this, right, we push this lever, then this is going to happen. So it's always a balancing act, and turnovers, cost you a lot of money. And, this unit we had to all 20 are going to be turned. We have 4 left to turn out of 20 in 3 years. So we've been quite busy with this building. So, that's where we're at. If that,
I can imagine. Yeah, absolutely. And that's great. I appreciate the honesty. And also I want to point out too, that you're making this decision with your wife too, because again, this is a people-based business, right? Like, as we go through this process of renting out property that we own to potential lessees out there, we have to understand these are people too that are renting. So if you go in, like, how would you feel if, you're barely making it happen, and then your landlord comes and says, hey, next month it's going to be $100 more, which is like a 20% increase, right? Or 15% increase on what you're paying already. That's no way to do it. I think there are approaches where you do like maybe a gradual increase, or you do something for them that's really special. Like you install a ceiling fan or do something that's actually improving the property, but giving them an extra amenity. I found that those things also help. But that conversation though, that you take with your significant other to help give you an extra perspective, I think that's a really great way to go about it. So let me ask you here too, there's a lot of people that are struggling with PM relationships right now. It seems to be a constant battle. Like it seems like there's always, especially in the spaces that we're running at, like, between, 50 and 100 units, it's third-party management. So, you've got to deal with what a property manager will give you to manage things off-site, right? And how would you recommend people think about lining up incentivization so that when the PMs win, so do the owners, creating those win-win situations? Do you have any advice on that or anything to think about from that standpoint?
I don't really. That's an interesting thought process. But I don't really have anything on that. I do know though, from the property management standpoint, the company, and I just told the guy today we were talking about the same thing, and he's like, he's in Syracuse, and he's like, there's not a lot of good property management companies here, blah blah blah. I'm thinking of starting my own. I said, that's awesome, but understand, all those property management companies in Syracuse didn't start by saying, I'm going to be the shittiest property management company in Syracuse. That wasn't their point, right? So the company I worked for, we went above and beyond to try and do the right thing for the owners. We'd get 10 quotes, roofing quotes sometimes. We went out of our way, but it's so tough to be a property management company. The owners don't want to make repairs, right? I mean, who really wants to replace a roof? The tenant's pissed off because the roof's leaking and you're caught in the middle. And with an apartment building, every time, my wife and I go to the building constant, she's there all the time. She's picking up trash, right? You can't pay a property management company to go there every day and pick up trash because you have to pay them. And that's a problem, right? So when people say, oh, the management company doesn't do as great of a job as I do. Well, if you want to pay them a lot more, they would do a better job, but it's a fine balancing act. And it's tough for a lot of property management companies. A lot of them have, they want to do good. They want to provide an excellent service. It's just tough. They're caught in the middle. And anybody that's been a landlord, that I've seen from an owner to a property, working for a property management company, a large property management company. I see that it is tough. So just keep that in mind. Unless they're doing a really shitty job, then it's tough, but don't be afraid to move on if you have to.
Yeah, of course. I think that people expect a lot out of their property managers, and it's kind of an unfair thing. They expect problems to go away for no money, right, at all.
Yeah.
And they expect them to do it for free as well, right? And it's a very tough business. I completely agree with you. Is there anything that maybe, since you were in the property management role, anything that that you can tell to investors or owners that would help the property managers do their job better, that increases the bottom line on NOI?
Yes. Here's the realistic thing, right? Don't buy a shitty property. I would see that luckily, and it's true, but unless you're going to rehab it, right?
Yeah.
We would see that. And luckily with my old company, we would go out there and we'd be able to evaluate and make the decision no, we're not going to manage that property because it's going to be a ton of headaches. So we would see people buy these homes and they're just they're terrible. They need to be a complete gut rehab, but they want to put it back on the market in that condition. Now, all that's going to have, when you put someone back in that house, the house has been vacant. Now the person's going to be using all of the services, right? They're going to be running the water, the drains, everything's going to be used. The electrical, you're going to have problems. You're going to have work orders. You're going to have the property managers are going to constantly be going out there to fix issues. And the tenant base that's going to live in that property more than likely is going to be a little rougher. So you're going to have issues filling the vacancy with a quality tenant as well. So that's going to affect your bottom line. So, when you buy a property like that, say you're out of state and you're buying a house in Detroit, we see that a lot, right? Those houses are, on paper, they look fantastic, but usually they're a little rougher. I've actually went to sell a few homes for a client of mine. I don't do it in Detroit anymore, but I would tell him, look, bro, I'm in the living room and I can see daylight, dude. I'm looking out. And he's like, no way, that roof is supposed to be fixed. I'm like, yeah, they're rougher properties. So, if you're going to buy something like that, plan on, getting your eyes on it and plan on putting some money into it. And that'll help you on work orders.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, having owners that are involved in heavy repositions like that too, really makes a big difference too. So if you have, a property manager, if I was a property manager and I saw an owner that was flying out and, taking it seriously and not just leaving the PM to sort out all the mess, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one thing. And then also being capitalized enough as an owner to help the property manager solve problems with that, right? I think that's what you were saying already. Don't buy a crappy property. Just make sure that it's in your business plan to be able to address problems as they come up and not be pinching pennies and trying to squeeze everything out of the tenants, right?
Yeah, and meaning don't buy a crappy property and then try to put that product right on the market
Yeah,
and
that's
get
right.
upset when the property management says, no, we need to do this, this, and this. And to your
Yeah.
point, someone that is involved or is on site, I could go there and walk them through the property and I could show them everything I see that's going to need to be repaired. There's going to be an issue or things like that. So when you do have someone involved, I would love to go out there and go, look, here's the problem here. Here's the problem here.
Fantastic. All right, last question that I have for you before we hop into the rapid round here, which is one of my favorite segments of the show. But you've had a lot of experiences wearing a lot of different hats as a property manager, someone who rolls up their sleeves and does construction work and estimating work and trying to put deals together, as a distressed property investor, right? How have your experiences as a person wearing these different hats changed your approach to investing over time? What is it? What are you looking for nowadays that maybe you weren't looking for early on?
I think one of the major things now I'm looking for help and partners. Okay. So one of the major things, like I did this last year and I made a huge mistake. We couldn't find a handyman and I don't have a job. So I'm like, you know what? I'll go be the handyman. I'm
Oh no.
halfway. Yeah.
Oh
I'm
no.
halfway decent. I can fill that void. Right. And, I probably 3 months, I was the handyman and, it was all right. I enjoyed it for a minute. I was making a ton of content. So I'm like, yeah, this isn't bad. Right. And then my buddy asked me two questions. He said, are you creating money or are you saving money? And I was like, shit, I'm saving money. And he goes, dude, you're doing the wrong thing. So that was huge for me. And right then, my wife and I said, that's it. I'm done being the handyman. And we found somebody, we hired it out because there's people out there and we found somebody in that role. I've never gone back to that. So that was huge for me. And now that's the change. And that's freed up time for me to be able to find other bigger deals and pursue that area we're headed into now.
Yeah, I love that. That's a microcosm of leverage. I think you guys have discovered leverage, and I'm glad that you were able to discover that, right? Because here's the deadly thing, right? It is awesome if you are willing to work. If you have a great work ethic, I find it myself. I love to do everything in this business, right? I love capital raising. I love talking with operators like you. I love talking with lenders, doing due diligence, like underwriting. I love every piece of this because it's good in its own right, right?
Yeah.
But that's the problem, is that it'll sink you in and you won't be able to get to make any forward progress on what really matters, because you'll really just be buying yourself a job if you're trying to do everything. So I love that shift in mindset and perspective for you to be able to realize that it's time to move on and start to do things that will help you grow the business even more. So that's great.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to say about team building and, things that you're looking at right now to grow in the next 3 years?
Actually, we made a commitment in January. We were at a GoBundance event last January, and I called my wife and I'm like, look, yeah, I just talked to a GoBro and I told him I'm going to syndicate 100 units or I'm going to buy a 16 unit apartment building. And he's like, why would you buy the 16 unit apartment building? Isn't it going to be a lot of work? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's going to take 2 years. It's going to be everything I just said. It's going to need a ton of work. It's going to be stress for my wife and I. And he's like, why don't you just focus on syndicating the 100 units? And I'm like, you know what? I called my wife that night and she's like, thank you. And that was it. And I actually talked to you. I reached out to you a while back, and because it's a problem when you're getting into it, right? We have all this experience in apartments, but finding deal flow was a problem. So we were fortunate enough to be able to jump on a team that had 780 million in assets under management. And they said, hey, do you want to do some things with us? And we said, yeah. And then 2 months later, after being intentional on that January 26th or whatever it was, 2 months later, we were on a team under contract on a property for 98 units. So, I mean, just being intentional is one of the biggest things that I've gotten out of GoBundance and just about, moving us forward, my wife and I and our team.
I love this. Yeah, this is fantastic. And this is just an indicator of the things to come, right?
Yeah.
Just directing that energy, right? Like, because you have the energy scattered, right? You're like, I want a 16 unit for myself. And then I want this, like you're treating them like two separate businesses and you're looking to expand into both, right?
Yes.
But it takes that perspective and the reality check and being able to talk with accountability partners on what it is that you truly want deep down through a different mechanism and step into it fully. And I think that's a mindset thing. And as you're growing your mindset, your team grows along with it. And I just got to say bravo, because that's good stuff.
Thanks. And that was one of the biggest things, the problems I had, right? Just we had gotten from 0 to 41 units, right? With no money, like I said. And I'm like, dude, we're like this Rocky Balboa, like come from behind, shouldn't be here, kind of chip on the shoulder kind of attitude. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we're here. And I'm like, something clicked. And I was like, I'm never going to get past 41 units. I'm never going to get to 1,000 units with that type of an attitude, because nobody I know at that level has that attitude. They have a giving and a helpful and abundance mentality, right? And I really needed to change that. And that really changed, that's why I did join Abundance. But I needed to change that mentality. And whatever gets me to 1,000 units, there's going to be something there that I'm going to have to change that mentality too. So it's just all about personal growth. And that's been a huge part of our business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I always find that, mindset is the leading indicator to any type of growth in business, personal, anything. It's kind of like this bedrock, right? That gives everything a place to grow. So good stuff. So Grant, this is awesome, man. We could be talking about this for hours, but unfortunately what we'll do is we're going to head over to our rapid round, which is the final part of our show. And it's 5 questions that we ask every one of our guests, and they're meant to be answered in about 30 seconds a piece. So if you're ready, we can jump right in.
Let's do it.
All right. Question number 1. What book has had the biggest impact on you and why? And we ask that it not be either the Bible or the purple Bible known as Rich Dad or Poor Dad.
How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you're an investor or anyone in the world or in business or anything, I don't care what you are, read that book. It teaches you how to be a better listener and just how to get along with people. Been huge for me.
Yeah, that's an incredible book. People always forget that real estate investing is a people business. I think we talked about this already, right?
Yeah.
And that if your tenants are people, your property management team is people, your investors are people. And so the better that you can do to work with people by working on that part of you, the better it's going to be. It's really counterintuitive, but it has worked like a gem for me as well. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Good.
Number 2, if people wanted to emulate your success, what do you think is the first actionable thing that they could do to follow in your footsteps?
Start listening to podcasts like yours. That's what I did. I went out there and got some information. I Googled everything I could, listened to podcasts, and that's where I would start and figure out where you're going to fit in. If you can buy a single family home, buy a single family home, whatever you can do to move forward. If you're, not ready for bigger properties yet.
Bingo. Take that action. Love it. Number 3, what is one tool, process, or hack in the last 3 to 6 months that you've employed that has helped save you time and or effort?
I would say probably that what I told you earlier. Am I creating money, or am I saving money? I think that's a great one to look at it. And I have been looking at my time and giving that away. Hired somebody to cut my grass. These little things that I thought I'd never give away. I'm slowly giving those things away to free up more of my time. Time's very valuable to me now.
It is. And really, these little things add up, don't they?
Yeah.
And, eventually, if you can outsource a lot of the things that you either are doing just because you're doing them or you've grown up doing them, it just really opens up a whole new life for you as well. So I love that. Okay. Number 4, if the people that you know had to describe you with one single word, what do you think that word would be?
Honest. I pride myself on not lying. I don't lie. So that's one thing I'm very proud of to say.
Does that have anything to do with what you went through 10 years ago and escaping alcoholism as well?
I would say so, because I was living this, this life that, I wasn't proud of. And I think coming out of that, I think, that's really helped me be a better person. And the growth as well. Like I always say, like you can be an asshole when you drink and you're an asshole, and you can quit drinking and still be an asshole too. So just because you quit drinking doesn't mean your life's going to dramatically change. You need personal growth. And And that's been huge for me, but I think that's probably where that does come from. Yeah.
Good. Awesome. I love it. And yeah, that's a great thing that you've learned from that. It's a blessing in disguise, not in disguise, but in plain sight, obviously.
Yep.
So, all right, last question, number 5. What is one small thing that most people do not know about you?
I love creating content, I guess, is all I can think of offhand. But I love I love creating some content, helping some people out, putting it out into the world and seeing the reaction, like what comes back from it. So that's one thing I'm really passionate about now, is, as well as investing in apartment buildings. The two for me go hand in hand, and something I'm just super excited about.
Yeah, that's great, man. Well, Grant, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was awesome having you. But before we go, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit more about how they can find out what's going on in your world, or if they want to contact you, how can people do so?
Yeah, it's really 3 ways about our apartment investing: warringtoncapital.com. You get some information there. On Instagram, Grant Warrington, and on TikTok, Grant Warrington. I'm huge on those platforms, and you DM me or reach out to me in any of those places. There's a link in my bio on all those, and you can schedule a free 30-minute phone call with me.
Awesome. Well, Grant, it's been a pleasure having you on, and listeners, fellow listeners who have reached the end of the show here. I just want to thank you guys for being with us. And, we've recorded almost 125, 130 episodes. And I know that there's folks out there that have listened to every single one of them. So I really want to call out those and thank them specifically for being a part of our family. And for those who just found us, please make sure that you like, comment, subscribe wherever you're listening or watching this content. It really helps appease those algorithm gods so that we can get exposure to more and more people, and then bring on incredible guests just like Grant on the show. So Grant, thank you once more again for coming on. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me, Derek. I enjoyed it, man.
Absolutely. Thank you. And for all you listeners out there, thank you very much. This is Derek. We will see you next week. I am signing off for the day. Take care, everyone.